Hi everybody and welcome to the Graduate Study in Engineering information session in the Meet Melbourne Graduate 2020 online series. In this session, we'll be covering graduate study options in different areas of engineering at the University of Melbourne. My name is Katie Potts. I am a student recruitment coordinator in Melbourne School of Engineering and I will be the moderator for this evening. Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, the University of Melbourne acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Wurundjeri people who have been custodians of this land for thousands of years. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. Thank you for joining the webinar. We're thrilled to have audiences joining live from different time zones, both in Australia and possibly overseas too. We are recording this session, so if you miss anything or if you'd like to come back to something, you can access it afterwards on the website. Throughout the session, you can type your questions in the chat window on the platform. These questions will be read and responded to by my colleagues Monica, Jackie and Rahul. They're from Melbourne School of Engineering Future Students team and they will be off screen for the duration of the webinar. Any questions not answered can be submitted to our study website after the webinar. So tonight you will hear a short presentation from Professor Jamie Evans and then we'll have a bit of a chat and an opportunity to ask questions of our panel of current master's students. So we have Julia Honan, Nigel Kerr, Vanessa Hope and Dylan Lau. But for now, I'll hand over to Professor Jamie Evans to give you a bit of an insight into what studying engineering at Melbourne is like. Thanks, Jamie.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Katie, and thank you all of you for joining us this evening. The focus is going to really be on the Master of Engineering, although you can ask questions about absolutely anything at all. And before I jump into it, I wanted to tell you a little bit about who I am. So I grew up in the absolutely wonderful town of Newcastle, New South Wales through the 70s and 80s. And now I find myself as Deputy Dean Academic in the Melbourne School of Engineering. And so responsible for all of our courses and the student experience and teaching and learning within the Melbourne School of Engineering. But I'm also a professor in electrical engineering and I do research in communications, including 5G and 6G and the Internet of Things. So although I do research in 5G, ladies and gentlemen, please do not blame me for COVID-19. It really wasn't me. So I work in communications theory and I never give a talk without mentioning the man on the next slide because he is my absolute hero. Claude Elwood Shannon. There he is there, and in 1948 he wrote a paper in the middle there called The Mathematical Theory of Communication. And it really defined what information is, how you measure it, and he looked at fundamental limits on how fast you can send information from one point to another while making the communication arbitrarily reliable. And do yourself a favor, there's a recent book called A Mind at Play, How Claude Shannon Invented the Information Age. So you absolutely must read that, just to prove how much I love this man. I can tell you that my son is called Claude. My daughter is named Shannon. And my dog is called Elwood. And just a little bit of a warning tonight, my son likes to play the electric guitar. My daughter is learning the French horn. And Elwood, well, he just loves to bark. So there may be a few interruptions throughout my talk today. Bear with me. Okay, engineering. Well, what do engineers do? Well, they create solutions that make a real difference to our world and the way we live. Engineers have had a huge responsibility for determining what the world looks like now, and more importantly, what it's going to look like into the future. And I like that word create there, because engineering is from a Latin word in generare, which actually means to create. So it's a lot more than just applied science. You see those beautiful students there? They are real students, real University of Melbourne students. We don't need to use models or actors. That's just how talented our students are. And you'll find out more about that when we get to the panel session in a minute. So engineering is, you know, as I said, it's important for determining what the world looks like now, but more importantly, there are all these grand challenges that the world face, and here are a whole number identified by the National Academy of Engineering in the United States, and some fascinating problems there. Solar energy, the nitrogen cycle, providing access to clean water. So much of the world's population doesn't have access to clean water. How do we fix that? How do we engineer better medicine, secure cyberspace? Some amazing problems, some huge complex problems to grapple with. And engineering is just a fabulous training and background to get right in the middle of these challenges. So our engineering courses, and here I'm talking about our graduate courses. And we have the Master of Engineering, which is our professional degree, the one that allows you to qualify as an engineer. We have specialised masters, as listed there, and they're more for people who already have an engineering qualification. And we also have our research degrees, our MPhil and our PhD. And the focus of this session is really on that top box there, the Master of Engineering. That's what I'll be talking about. Our panelists are all students within the Master of Engineering. But nonetheless, you can still ask questions of any sort, and they will be addressed for you. So the Master of Engineering, well, it has a dual accreditation. It has this URACE accreditation as well as the Engineers Australia one. And it's one of the unique features and one of the advantages of completing with a Master of Engineering rather than a bachelor's, is that we can get this European master's level accreditation in addition to the standard Washington Accord accreditation from Engineers Australia. We have 13 specialisations. You get access to all sorts of advanced technical electives, and you can indeed take the internship as a 4-credit double subject within the Master of Engineering. And you can see all the different specialisations there, sort of the classics from civil and mechanical and electrical through to some of the more emerging areas such as biomedical and even environmental. As well as the Master of Engineering Mechanical or the Master of Engineering Chemical, we have a with business option. And in this option here, it's co-developed and co-taught by the Melbourne Business School. And there are 5 business subjects developed specifically for engineers. And so what you do here is you take away 5 of the electives within the programs and replace it by these 5 with business subjects. And it gives sort of a different experience, perhaps a more rounded type of experience, especially if you have an interest in the business side of things. That might be a great option for you. And it's not available in all of the streams, but it is in the 6 listed in the green box there: biomedical, chemical, civil, electrical, mechanical, and software. So this is our how to become an engineer slide. And of course, you don't have a Bachelor of Engineering at the University of Melbourne, but we do have majors in 3 of the undergraduate degrees, which then flow into a 2-year Master of Engineering. And that is if you continue in the same area. So from chemical systems to a Masters of Engineering in chemical, for example, would typically be a 3+2. But importantly, that's not the only way to get into the Master of Engineering. You don't have to study at Melbourne, and you certainly don't have to do an engineering systems major to get into the Master of Engineering. We've set it up, in fact, so that any bachelor degree with some relevant maths and science prerequisites equivalent to about one full-time semester of study, will get you into the Master of Engineering. And if that's all you've got and you don't have any other relevant subjects, then the Master of Engineering might be 3 years long. But if you've already got, say, a 4-year engineering degree somewhere, or you've done one of the engineering systems majors, then the length of that Master of Engineering will reduce accordingly, all the way down to 2 years. Okay, so that is the main thing about how you get in. Importantly, you don't have to be studying an engineering systems major at the University of Melbourne. Oh, okay. Well, look, and there's a fair bit of this still within the Master of Engineering. This is one of my classes recently. You can see number 31.5 student, 31, 32. She can't even look. The guy up the back, well, I think he just needs to go to the bathroom. And you know, there's still a little bit of that, the standard traditional lecture, but we really try to have a strong push in the Masters into industry engagement and to an increasing amount of design and project-based subjects. But there's still a little bit of sitting in these wonderful lecture theatres. So in terms of practical industry opportunities, I'm sure the panel will tell us a lot more about this later, but there are the standard careers fairs. There are opportunities to sort of get involved in starting your own business and entrepreneurships and presenting to industry, clubs and societies. And in the internship that I have listed there is something that we put a lot of energy and effort into growing over the last 4 to 5 years. And we should have about 500 students go through the 4-credit internship this year or next. And that's this year, even with the disruptions due to COVID-19. So it is something we're absolutely committed to creating as many opportunities as we can for our students to do internships. But also we have these capstone projects at the end of the Master of Engineering. They might be research-based. Many of them are industry-based as well. So it's another opportunity to engage with industry. And this is where you pull everything together. You can do some really cool things. You know, there's improving the bionic eye implant with a microelectric array, home energy usage, all sorts of really cool things. Even the Jimmy Bot, the guitar playing robot. It sounds terrible, but it's probably on a level with my son playing the electric guitar. So yeah, industry capstones or just capstones, you pull everything together and sort of do some amazing things. I'm hoping we can hear a little bit from the panel about what they're doing in their capstone projects a little bit later on. So I reckon you've heard enough from me, because we're all here to hear from our amazing panelists who have been introduced to you before. So I might stop sharing my screen so that you can see them up large. Let's see if this works. I think I've stopped sharing the screen. If not, someone will do it for me. All right. Panelists, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good, Dave.
Good. All right. Yeah. Now I'm going to start with one that you would not have been expecting. No, I'm not. I'm going to start with, I want you to tell everyone a little bit about yourselves, your journey to where you are today, knowing that we've got a lot of questions coming later on, but just as a little bit of an introductory, who are you? What are you doing now? How'd you get here? So maybe we'll start with Julia.
Sure. So I'm Julia. Going back to when I first started, first chose engineering. I knew I liked maths and chemistry at school, and I wanted to try engineering in sort of a flexible way, so I could, wasn't locked into it at first. So I started off with science at Melbourne and did the chemical systems major in undergrad, and instantly I knew I liked it. The chemistry side wasn't as much of a passion as I thought it was, but the maths in the engineering side put together with it turned into something that I really liked. So I did my 3 years of undergrad and then started my master's in chemical engineering. And I also did an exchange to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, which is about 3 hours out of Chicago, in my second semester of my master's, which was amazing too. Really fortunate that I had that opportunity from Melbourne, even in my master's as well. While I was over there, I also did an internship with an engineering company called Worley, it was Worley Parsons at the time, in Calgary in Canada. And then I also did an internship just the summer that's passed with Carlton United Breweries. And that's turned into doing an industry project as well in this semester. So unfortunately doing it from home because I'm not allowed on site because of everything that's happened. But that one's for credit. So the internship I just did as paid work outside of uni, but the industry project that I continued with was for credit for my degree. And I'm actually about to graduate. So this is my last 2 weeks of my master's, just coming up to exams. And I've got a grad job at Carlton United Breweries as well, starting next year. So that's me.
Fantastic, thank you. Maybe we'll jump to Nigel.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Hey everyone, my name's Nigel. I'm studying the Master of Mechanical Engineering. So I came through the Bachelor of Science stream, majoring in mechanical systems. I guess I was pretty sure I wanted to do engineering, having always enjoyed technology, things like computers in high school and stuff like that. And I found that to be the case when I've come to university. I've really enjoyed learning about how things work, and getting involved in industry has really complemented my academic coursework. So outside my studies, I've done a few internships. I started off in an internship with an electric vehicle design company here in Melbourne. So that was really cool, but then I've transitioned out of that to doing a few internships at medical device companies. So I guess that shows the kinds of industries I've been interested in. And I also did an exchange at ETH Zurich in Switzerland. So that was a really cool experience as well, and something that I definitely recommend if you guys have the chance. Within the university, I've also done some research work with in cartilage research with the Department of Biomedical Engineering. So I guess that shows there's some opportunity there to cross over, that even though I'm studying mechanical, I'm engaged quite heavily in biomedical engineering. So yeah, so I hope that covers a few experiences.
Fantastic, thanks Nigel. Vanessa, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm Vanessa. I study civil engineering, and a bit different to the guys that actually came through the commerce degree. So I have a Bachelor of Commerce in Economics and Finance, and I suppose one of the main draw cards for me was that at Melbourne I was able to be a little bit flexible with what I wanted to do. I thought that I might like engineering. I liked maths, but I wasn't sure, and it looked tricky, and I didn't want to jump straight into it. But yeah, I got to do engineering subjects as my elective subjects in my commerce degree, and that really cemented the idea that I wanted to do engineering, and I continued forward. Yeah, so when I entered my master's, I was only really 6 months behind the other science students, which has been really good. I currently work at the Department of Transport as a student engineer, so that's the old Vic roads. And I basically just look at the structural capacity of bridges, geometric capacity of roundabouts and intersections, stuff like that. So really classic civil engineering work, really. And I did that through the Melbourne University internship subject as well, which was really useful for me because I got to cut off a bit of time from my already extra long degree due to being a bit behind from commerce. So yeah, that's me.
Maybe while I've got you there, before we move on to Dylan, I think there was a question asking the difference between civil and structural engineering. Would you be able to comment on that?
Yeah, so that's quite a good question, because I carefully considered both of them until I realized that there's actually only one subject difference at my level anyway, once I'd done all the background work. And I suppose the only difference is that in civil you get to do transport systems, whereas in structural you just do a extended structural theory. So it really depends on the student or what your interests are, I suppose. I work with a lot of structural engineers who do the same job as a civil engineer. So I suppose, yeah, it's up to your interest. If you really like maths and mechanics of beams, bridges, things like that, tunnels, I would recommend structural. But if you're looking for a bit more of a well-rounded degree, civil gives you a few more interesting subjects. But you're not really cutting out the opportunity of working in either by doing either, if that makes sense.
Fantastic, thank you. Dylan, over to you.
Cool. Hey guys, I'm Dylan, and I'm doing my master's in mechanical engineering after I finished my Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Systems. I am from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, so I am an international student studying here in this university. I did engineering because I guess I kind of liked physics in high school, along with mathematics, and I always liked the problem-solving aspect of physics and mathematics, not so much of the theoretical part, which is why I hopped on the plane and came here to Melbourne and never looked back. Yeah, that's me. Aside from studies, I did an internship in Accenture back in Kuala Lumpur, my hometown. And yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. I might just push on the internship a little, because you all said, I think you all said you did at least one internship, but did it just land in your lap, or did you have to be a bit proactive? How do you make that happen? Love to hear some words of wisdom on that.
I'm happy to jump in on that.
Go, Nigel. Yep.
Yeah, so I guess I took a bit of a stepping stone approach, and definitely one of the first questions I had at the start was, how do I get these internships when they expect you to already have some experience? And I guess the advice I would give is to make use of the opportunities you have in university. That tends to be a good environment. It's a good supportive environment where there's a lot of opportunities for things like clubs. The Melbourne Uni internship program also offers a lot of opportunities for students, which you have to apply, and maybe expect for your first internship, it could be unpaid. That's, I guess the building blocks that you take towards getting perhaps to a company or to a kind of role that you're really striving for, that could be competitive. So yeah, I guess that's my advice. Take it slow. It's not going to happen immediately. Try build up the experiences, and it'll get easier as you go along, in my experience.
I agree with Nigel. I'll also add that just apply to a lot. So for every story where you hear about someone getting an internship, they're likely to have applied to many, many, many more and got a lot of rejections. But it's just about taking that process as practice. So each interview or each stage further you get, you'll just do better at it next time. And I also agree that a lot of companies care about more than just your academics. So it's not necessarily good marks that get you the role in the end. It's have you got, stories you can talk about where you've been involved with clubs at uni, even drawing on experience from group assignments helps. Just sort of thinking about that along the way of how can this help me in an interview situation, but also doing things that you enjoy. So you talk about it sort of passionately.
Fantastic. Vanessa or Dylan, would you like to add to those tips for finding internships?
Yeah, I just wanted also say
Right.
Vanessa.
it definitely doesn't just fall into your lap, and also that you might get offered something that you might not have previously considered, and I would recommend definitely still taking it. So take the opportunities that you can get, and really try and learn while you're there. I thought that I wouldn't really like my role too much, but I thought I would just try it out anyway, and I ended up really liking it, and I'm still there. And yeah, that would be my recommendation. Try new stuff out. Don't be afraid to really jump into something that you hadn't previously considered doing.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add on Vanessa's point, I actually did my internship not in mechanical engineering, but in kind of like a project management software engineering kind of route. Yeah, it was pretty eye-opening. It kind of shows you, different aspects of work culture that you may not learn in university. So yeah, definitely take that step and feel free to do something outside of your major. And also, if for tips on getting internships, like I guess some companies like to see initiative from students. Like if you manage to find the HR head of a company that you're interested in on LinkedIn, feel free to maybe spend an hour or so typing up a like a cold contact email asking for any vacancies or internship opportunities in the coming summer. And yeah, companies love to see when students take initiative. Yep.
Terrific. Thank you. If Katie's not going to jump in with a question, then I've got one I always like to ask, which is, what has been your favourite subject that you've studied at university, and why? What makes it your favourite? Don't know. Anyone can start.
I'll start. And I think it's actually quite interesting that it wasn't mentioned in the PowerPoint, because there is a compulsory core subject called Creating Innovative Engineering. Yeah, it's a really interesting subject. It definitely wasn't what I expected. And basically, you just get put in a small team and you get put on an industry project with an industry sponsor and a mentor. And it might not be a classic technical project, and you kind of just have to come towards a solution in your group by the end of the semester, and present it to your sponsor, who is seriously considering taking on what you come up with. I was lucky enough to have a really good project where we worked with the Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre in developing sustainable initiatives for research laboratories, which obviously is not related to civil engineering at all. And we really had to go in and investigate why people behave the way they did, or why do people not recycle? Why do they not turn things off properly? And what can we implement that's cheap? It's a research laboratory. They run off donations. And secondly, easy enough to do. And really excitingly, the solution that we came up with, it was quite straightforward and simple, so much so that Peter Mac runs with it, and they now implement it in their laboratory. So that was a really interesting, different subject, and I really enjoyed that.
I guess there, it was nice to have a sense that it was a real thing that people actually cared about. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for mentioning that, Vanessa. Who's next? Who's got another favourite subject?
I've got one that was a bit surprising to me because it's a subject called control systems that you do in Masters of Mechanical Engineering, but it's also in electrical. I think it might be in a few other degrees. And it's a surprising one because it's a bit of a boogie subject for a lot of Mech Eng students, because it's technically in the Department of Electrical Engineering. But what I found really enjoyable about it was, I guess, understand it goes through the process of, I guess, learning how to develop a basic controller for a generic system. And I liked how that generally applied across multiple disciplines. So it could work for electronic system, but it could also work for mechanical systems. And it was cool to kind of, I guess, see you design a controller in theory, and then the subject allowed you to implement that in a workshop. So I guess it's cool to sort of see how the device would work according to whatever your MATLAB plot or your Excel spreadsheet, and then sort of see it transition to real life. So yeah, that's something that I really enjoyed.
Fantastic. Julia?
Yeah, so mine I would say was the chemical engineering design project. So in Jamie's presentation, he mentioned the capstone, but chemical engineering don't have the same capstone as the other engineering specialties. So we have a subject called design project. It just goes across one semester, and we're given our group and we're given our project, what we have to design. So we had to design a rare earth element extraction facility, and the freedom in that was choosing how it would be extracted and what equipment there would be. At the time, it was really, really challenging and full-on work hours, but I think the reward at the end, that accomplishment of handing in hundreds of pages of work and everything we learned out of the whole thing being self-directed, and it getting to have consultations with industry experts as well as with our professors, I think the reward at the end made it my favourite subject.
Terrific. Did you have one, Dylan, that stands out?
Yeah, for sure. This may only apply to those who did the bachelor's or if you're doing the 3-year master's program. But this is a subject called mechanical design, and what it has you do is it forces you have to build like a robot to solve a specific task for that year, and they kind of like they enter you in this competition called the Warman, which is like an engineering competition held every year in Australia. And basically what I had to do was like pick up a platform on top of a ledge and place it somewhere, and you can do that in any way you want. You can construct, you know, a robot with pincers or with claws, and so the subject basically guides you from the ground up. You know, it starts off with the design process. How tall should you build a robot? What should you make it with? Should you make it with wood, steel? And yeah, it's a pretty good subject, really practical, and you build it like literally from scratch. You've got access to the engineering workshops. They guide you through things through handling mechanical parts, through using heavy duty gear. You know, it's a pretty cool subject. It's one of the most hands-on subjects Melbourne Uni has, and for those who like the practical aspect of engineering, I highly recommend it.
Terrific.
So I have a question that's come through from the audience about the transition from the bachelor's degree through to the master's. So 3 of you have obviously done the Bachelor of Science and stuck to the same specialisation. And then Vanessa, you've done the Bachelor of Commerce, but it's to all of you. So how did you find the transition between the Bachelor to Masters?
For me, coming from the undergraduate in science chemical systems and then into the masters, it was very seamless. So looking back, I can't even really distinguish where the undergrad finished and the masters started, because in the chemical systems major you do masters level subjects, so what people who enter for the 3-year masters would be doing in their masters. So yeah, there was no real transition point because the subjects continually just flow on to the next one.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like,
Oops.
Can't hear you, Dylan.
Cut out.
oh, sorry, missed the button there. But yeah, I feel the same way. Life is pretty much the same in the bachelor's and the master's. You know, you still go to lectures, you still do tutorials and assignments. What I do have to mention is that what you learn in the master's is a lot more advanced. I guess it's a lot more industry specific. Whereas in the bachelor's, some subjects may be general across all different industries, because Melbourne Uni gives you like the versatility and the option to switch into different streams if you like. But in the masters, it's definitely a lot more specific, and what you learn feels a lot more applicable if you were to become an engineer. Yeah.
Cool.
Did any of you consider a different specialisation when you transitioned from your Bachelor of Science into your Masters?
I considered I considered the biochemical stream, which, similar to the civil structural thing, there's only 2 subjects different, and I ended up just sticking with chemical because it gave me the option to choose those subjects as an elective anyway. So no real change for me.
Yeah, I didn't change in the between bachelor's and master's, but I started my bachelor's actually wanting to do civil, but then I was able to switch basically in the middle of my second year to mechanical without even extending my bachelor's degree. So I guess that shows a bit of the flexibility that's allowed with the Melbourne model.
Cool.
And Vanessa, did you know what's area of engineering that you thought you'd do out of the Bachelor of Commerce, or were you not?
Well, yeah, I actually really had a hard time deciding because yeah, I thought I might like to do environmental engineering, and then I also thought about structural and civil. I was never going to be an electrical engineer, I don't think, or a software engineer. I don't think that was where I was headed, but I decided on civil because it just gave me the most options, and I think that's kind of been my whole pathway has been, okay, what am I going to do to put myself in a position where I have the most options for a job or, you know, for a degree, anything like that. And I'm really glad I have. I did want to say though, with the transition from commerce from full-time commerce to full-time engineering, I was expecting the worst and it wasn't too bad at all. Obviously, it's a bit of a step up from a commerce degree, but yeah, it's definitely been manageable so far.
Great. Maybe could I probe a little more on extracurricular activities and what sort of things you got involved in? I think some people mentioned clubs and societies before, but what sorts of other things did you do to complement your studies? Nothing, obviously. Full-time study. That's good. I like it. No time to do anything else outside study. Julia.
In terms of at university, so the clubs, as you mentioned, put on a lot of different events. So there can be industry related as well as just for fun and for meeting other people in your course. So the Chemical Engineering Society is called MUSES, and there's always a MUSES sport competition each semester. So it's usually netball because the voting usually ends up being netball, and that's always good fun, as well as cocktail nights and then the industry events. I've also been involved as a outside of clubs as a engineering ambassador. So it lets us do things like this, be panel speakers as well as mentor younger students and high school students, which I've always found really beneficial as well.
Great. Any other tips on things to do outside your studies?
Yeah,
I was
in the international. I was in the International Student Union in Melbourne University for pretty much my whole bachelor degree. So that's 3 years, where the last year I was vice president of the student union. And if there's any international students listening here, I highly recommend at least having a look at it, because what it offers is a platform for international students to come together and talk about their experiences here in Melbourne, to remember home as closely as possible, because homesickness does happen amongst international students here in Melbourne, especially if you're have been far away from home for quite a while. And in the student union, we hold events. We have industry nights for international students as well. We do collaborations with different clubs in all around uni. We've got festivals. We've got cooking classes, and yeah, it's a really good avenue to use your time outside of studying to maybe give back to the international student community, or to sort of interact with all the different clubs and societies we have here in Melbourne University. So yeah, that's a pretty good path to take.
Fabulous. Nigel, were you going to say something too?
Yeah, sure. It's good to build on like what Dylan said. I found student clubs to be a really great way to, I guess, give back a bit and support the community around you. So there's a lot of university clubs that are involved with, I guess, philanthropic charity organizations and things like that. So that's something I definitely encourage if it's something you're passionate about. Another thing that was really a highlight throughout my time at Melbourne was with the biomedical engineering, Department of Biomedical Engineering, as I mentioned earlier. So I've been with that group for, I think, almost 3 years now, or a bit over 3 years. And I got involved in that simply by emailing a lecturer after seeing what kind of things they were involved in, and it aligned with something that I was interested in, which was, I guess, that crossover between mechanical and biomedical engineering. So that was a really great experience. It's given me some opportunities to to involve myself in some projects that have gone to conferences, have gone to papers and things like that. So it's a really great way to, I guess, build up a skill that's complementary to your engineering coursework. Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks, Nigel. Did you want to add anything there, Vanessa?
Just quickly, I was going to say I would definitely recommend getting involved at any age level. So if you're in your bachelor's degree still and you're thinking about getting involved, definitely do it, because you just never know who you might meet. And I think that, you know, some of my really good friends have been made through these extracurricular activities. Plus, if you go to the industry-based nights or the networking nights, you never know who you might strike up a chat with and find an internship opportunity, or even learn more about a place that you'd never heard of before, a job that you'd never heard of before. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend getting involved.
Cool.
We have time for probably one more question. So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in with this one. For Julia and Nigel, when you went on exchange, what did you have to do to get in, choose where you went, and at what point did you think about it, and any tips for that?
So I always wanted to do it. Like, as soon as I started uni, I knew I wanted to at some point, and just timing didn't really work out in my undergrad. And it partly was because I just really loved the course and didn't want to, like, I was just cementing friendships in university and things like that. Didn't want to just jump off for a year, a semester. And then it was still available in the master's, so I thought, this is my last chance, I'll look into it. There are less options of places you can go for chemical engineering in your master's compared to science in undergrad, but there was still a solid list of maybe 10 universities that we could go to. So I picked a top 3 and put those forward to Melbourne Uni, which then select you based on a well, at the time, I don't know if it's changed now, but you had a bit of a written application, and then it was also based on your marks. And different universities had different competition from other students wanting to go. So it was easier to get into some than others. I luckily got my first choice, and then the process of getting there, so the visas, working out subjects, accommodation, funding, all that kind of thing was, I'll be honest, a long and difficult process, but definitely worth it once I got there, and forgot all about how hard it was to get there once I got there. So 100% worth it, but challenging, but again, it was something I could draw on in interviews. So whenever you had a challenging time, getting over to my exchange, I had to go through all these processes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, unlike Julia, I wasn't sure I wanted to do an exchange for quite a while, but I was encouraged to do it by my supervisor in biomedical engineering because she was an alumnus at ETH Zurich. So she really encouraged, I guess, taking advantage of the opportunity. Melbourne Uni does have a lot of partner institutions. Like Julia said, I think there's more for bachelors, but at least for mechanical engineering, there were quite a few options still available. So you can find that online, and there's really a huge range of universities in basically every continent in the world. So in terms of the application process, like Julia said, it's quite long, but it is also quite interesting because you have to basically pick subjects that align with what your Melbourne Uni curriculum would have been. But especially for elective subjects, you can do something a bit more interesting, a bit more crazy that Melbourne Uni may not offer. So that's something that I definitely tried to utilize when I went to ETH. There's also a lot of financing options. So exchange can be quite, I guess, expensive living in another country. But Melbourne Uni is quite supportive. There's a few different scholarships and funding programs that can help you out. So definitely look into those if you're considering it. In terms of the experience itself, I think exchange really gives you an opportunity to see, I guess, how you work in your own independent environment. It puts you into a new environment where, I guess, no one knows you yet. So you can kind of just work how you want to, and it helps you figure out, I guess, how you adapt and I guess how you work as an individual. So it's definitely an experience that I would recommend, and try to, I guess, find an institution that you have some excitement or I guess connection with if you can.
I'll just add on to what Nigel said about the subject. So chemical engineering only has a few electives in the master's course, so I chose to do those all on exchange to make it a bit easier to line up the subjects so they didn't have to be a direct match with my coursework here, which did make it a lot easier. And also I got to do some really different subjects because American universities, well, some of them have a huge range of bizarre subjects, but also really great subjects. So I got to do one about minorities in STEM. I got to do another one about packaging engineering. So yeah, really different to what I would have done at Melbourne, but really great.
Fantastic, thank you. Sorry, I had my mic on mute there. The time always goes so quickly on a webinar. I could ask you questions the whole night. So we have run out of time, unfortunately. So I just wanted to say thank you very much to Jamie for explaining how to study engineering here at Melbourne, and also for chairing the panel. Thank you to our panel members, Julia, Nigel, Vanessa, and Dylan, for your time tonight and your insights. I'm always learning something new every time I speak with our students, so thank you so much, especially during your exam study period. And also thank you to our audience for attending the webinar and submitting your questions. We hope we've answered your questions throughout the webinar, but if we haven't, you can still reach out to us. You can submit an inquiry online and contact us and sign up to stay connected. So again, if you missed some of the webinar and you'd like to go back and view it, you'll receive a link as well. So thank you all very much, and I hope you have a great evening.